You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly ReQua, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
You're listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly ReQua. Today we're talking to Dr. Susan McMillan, owner of Vet-to-Pet Mobile Veterinary Service in Burlington, Vermont. Welcome, Susan.
Hey, Polly, how's it going?
Good. I have another question from a listener regarding skin tags. What is a skin tag, and do they need to be removed?
First, congratulations on getting questions from your listeners. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So skin tags they're non-cancerous, which means they're benign. If it's truly a skin tag, it's probably not going to go anywhere or do anything. It's not going to metastasize. It's not going to spread. It's not going to aggressively do anything to hurt your dog in any way. I think if it's for real a skin tag, about the worst thing that happens is sometimes they can get caught on something. Some of them can be really dangly and floppy and can actually become kind of these pendulous little masses hanging off your dog. And in that case, they can get torn or scratched and they can bleed. But a for real skin tag is just a little benign growth, often maybe the size of a pencil eraser, maybe smaller, maybe a little bigger. They're mostly just cosmetic, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Not to be worried about.
It kind of looks like a mole. Chuck has one on his back.
Yeah, they tend to be lighter colored, not always. A darker colored mass definitely kind of raises the suspicion that maybe it's something else.
Okay.
And just like we've talked about in the past, theoretically at least, you can't really tell that something, when it comes to skin cancer, you can't tell what something is just by looking at it or feeling it. But skin tags really have a very definite look. For anyone that's been to the dermatologist, they always tell you to watch for changes in color, texture, size, and you would do the same thing with a skin tag. First, you would want to point it out to the vet. We all try to do thorough physical exams, but certainly it is easy to miss a skin tag even when you're trying to be thorough. So point it out, make a note before you go in for your exam. Remember to point it out. Remember where it is, because I can't tell you how many people come in and, when the dog's laying on his back in front of the stove or something, it's easy to find the mass, and you get into the vet clinic and you can't find it, and you just want the vet to find it, which is fine.
It sounds
but
like us.
Some masses, I know, well, it happens all the time, and it's not anything bad. It's just, it can be really hard when the dog is more tense, he's not laying the way he usually lays, and some little masses are under the skin, or they're just really tiny and it's between their toes and you don't know which two toes. Just take the time to make a note to yourself exactly where it is. I've even had people with light colored dogs use a little Sharpie, mark it so you can really find it the next time, because we all want to address any question you have when you go to the vet. But if we can't even find it, it's hard to talk about it. And skin tags are definitely in that category because they're so small.
Yeah, it almost looks like a tick, but it's not.
It can be confused with a tick, and it often, I hate to say, is confused with a nipple. Some people, especially on a male dog, some people think male dogs don't have nipples, and for whatever reason, the dog is 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever, and all of a sudden you just start paying attention to this thing that's been there the dog's whole life maybe, but you start picking at it, you think it's a tick, and sometimes it turns out you're trying to pick off the dog's nipple. Like, okay, don't do that. So that's why, you want to spread the hair, get a good look at it. And definitely ticks have a certain look. If you have a question or you're picking at something that's not coming off easily, you may want to go to the vet and even if you can ask for like a tech appointment, can I just get a tech to look at this? I think it's a tick, but I don't know. Some clinics will let you kind of do a little back room appointment when it's just a quick question like that.
Okay. Okay.
They're usually kind of teardrop shaped. They're usually the same color as the skin. They can often be real floppy and flat. And it's not the same as a wart. It's not the same as a cyst. So, you have to differentiate all these things if you want to really figure out what it is and whether it's going to cause your dog any trouble. And like we talked about in a different podcast, a skin tag is totally benign. It's really a cosmetic thing. But again, if your dog is going in for a dental or some other surgery, maybe they have a big mass and they have to have that removed, or they have to have their ears cleaned under sedation, whatever. If there is a couple skin tags or a couple warts that you know about, then talk to your vet about maybe when the surgery's done, right before he wakes up, maybe we can remove these things while he's under. It's always nice to do one anesthesia instead of two.
Okay, great tip. Okay.
And a skin tag will, if your vet has cautery, they may remove it really simply with cautery. They may or may not even have to put in even one stitch. So once the dog is anesthetized, removing a skin tag is really quite straightforward. It won't add almost any time to the anesthesia. So it's a good idea to do, especially if your dog is middle-aged or older and you don't want to be anesthetizing them every time you turn around.
Okay. All right, that's good. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast, and we look forward to having you back.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.